So we work across these intersections. Being in a nonprofit puts us in deep connection with educators and also cutting edge developers. And we see ourselves as our job is to make the information flow. And by the way, if any of you ever want to talk about what it's like to work at a nonprofit, I'm always really welcoming of that conversation. It's at Rochelle63 is my Twitter handle, and just connect with me and I'll be happy to talk to you about what it's like to work at a place like us. I think it's great. Next slide. Equity has been and is a major focus of our work at Digital Promise. I'm just showing the message we've shared, but it's not just that we've posted a message. We vet every proposal before we write it to make sure we feel the equity dimension is strong enough. We are continually working to diversify our staffing. And so we really want to broaden our networks to be inclusive of all who could support this research. And we are meeting very regularly about steps we can take within our nonprofit. It's a very dynamic conversation. And that's part of what's exciting being here. We're able to have a conversation internally that I think is healthy and challenging and all those things it needs to be in this time. So core to what is exciting for me about being at Digital Promise is that we work with networks of schools. The premier network is called the League of Innovative Schools. These are school districts in the United States that join as a whole district. We have 114 districts that we're in connection with, and we work with them on improvement initiatives. Across those 114 districts, they're serving over 3 million students. So it puts us in constant connection with the opportunities to make a huge impact. And just a little organizer, about our team. Here's a quick slide on the team. Right now we're about 20 people and growing. We do expect to be hiring over the next year. Our work is much in demand, and we really bring together learning sciences research broadly to try to answer questions that matter for the future of the research, but also really for the schools that we serve. So a lot of our work takes a research practitioner partnership focus. You see a photo from last year of our team below. Last slide for me. And so just as orientation to the session today, we're going to hear 4 presentations. And we invite you at any time to chat in the chat to place questions you have, and we'll take those questions towards the end. So I'll be looking for those questions and gathering them and organizing. And the 4 presentations are shown here down the left-hand side that you'll hear. And we would just want to indicate with this chart how they're touching these different stakeholders, most of them touching all of them touching multiple stakeholders. And so with that, I'll turn it over for our first presentation. Kevin, you're up. Computational modeling in science and engineering.
Hi, folks. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kevin McElhaney from Digital Promise, and in this presentation, I'm going to merge some insights across 2 different ICLS papers from the SPICE project, and I'm going to try to do that and elaborates on rather than just repeats the information in the papers that are going to be in the proceedings. So this work is a collaboration across many researchers currently or formerly at Digital Promise, SRI International, Vanderbilt University, and the University of Virginia. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of the presentation. I'll start with a brief background on SPICE, describe a couple of NGSS-aligned design frameworks that have emerged from this work on integrating STEM and computer science and also designing for equity and inclusion. I'll show some examples of how these frameworks inform design supports for computational modeling in particular, and time permitting, end of the brief summary. Next slide. So quick background, SPICE is science projects integrating computing and engineering, a 3-year NSF STEM plus C design and development project. And our research development goals revolve around the development of an upper elementary curriculum unit that's aligned with a set of NGSS performance expectations in earth science and engineering. So when I say NGSS aligned, I'm actually mean aligned with specific performance expectations as opposed to just being 3-dimensional. Also, we're developing a computational modeling environment for students to model the phenomenon of urban water runoff, and developing materials to support elementary teachers to implement these materials in classrooms. Next slide. This is a zoomed out version of our design framework for integrating engineering, science, and computational modeling. There's more detail in the paper version in the proceedings. This is a kind of a high level view. We start by framing an engineering design challenge that's based on the underlying science concepts. In this case, we use the problem of water accumulation caused by urban water runoff, which is when ground surface materials don't absorb sufficient rainwater. So the rainwater that's not absorbed causes problems like flooding and pollution. The engineering design challenge also has to be appropriate for using computational methods, which I'll talk about in a second. The unit then engages students in an investigation of the science phenomenon of urban runoff. And so here they model and explain system behavior by identifying key system variables and relationships. And then the computational modeling environment enables students to develop a computational model of the phenomenon based on their conceptual understanding of the system. And we think this also helps students refine their underlying conceptual model by actually instantiating a computational model of the system. And then finally, students can use that computational model to test and refine those problem solutions. We feel like in general, this can be a good framework for integrating science, engineering, and computer science disciplines in STEM instruction broadly. Next slide. So this is a zoomed out version of our equity and inclusion framework that aims to provide targeted supports for STEM marginalized students. So in our design, we set out to ensure we're addressing equity and inclusion during every step of the design process rather than only as a post hoc review. So here's the way we do that. We start by identifying the NGSS PEs, and we also develop an equity and inclusion framework. In SPICE, we've chosen to focus on supporting, in particular, students' engagement with authentic problems and the use of language. In the second box, it shows we unpack the NGSS dimensions, not just from a scientific perspective, but we also identify the types of equity and inclusion supports that are specific to these dimensions. Third, we create lesson level three-dimensional performance statements that serve as anchors for curriculum activities. And based on unpacking, we articulate equitable and inclusive design guidelines that are aligned with these specific performance statements. We found this to be a helpful level at which to provide guidance to our instructional designers. Fourth, we design the activities in a way that integrates the design features and perspectives. And finally, we refine the designs based on feedback from classroom studies with students who represent our target population. Next slide. So here I show some examples of the ways we've used these frameworks in support of these concepts. So first, we set out to define the engineering problem in a way that engages students meaningfully in the problem. And what we did in this case was we asked students to resurface the school grounds of an actual school from one of our partner districts, right? So the Google image you see is actually one of our partner district schools that they use for the investigation. We also set the stage for computational approaches to solving this problem by overlaying onto the school grounds the 16 square grid that they use to develop their computational model. And you see how that works a little bit later. So by the way, the tricolored statement, that's how we articulate our lesson level three-dimensional performance statements, right? They take the same form as the NGSS PEs in having all three dimensions and the same color scheme. Next slide. So rather than going directly into a computational model, which we feel like could be overwhelming, we scaffold this process by engaging them in conceptual modeling first. So here they identify and relate the key system variables of rainfall, absorption, and surface runoff. Some design guidelines we articulated for conceptual modeling are to support engagement by allowing them to choose their own representations of water flow. And we support language by minimizing the need for text and using everyday language to support the use of specific scientific terminology. So you can see over here on the right, or sort of to provide everyday definitions for the eventual names of the system variables students will use in their computational model. Next slide, please. So we use a domain-specific modeling language to support computational modeling. So this entails developing custom programming blocks that directly represent the scientific concepts and system variables needed for modeling. This also minimizes the need for programming syntax. So this on the right is actually the complete set of blocks students need to develop a working model. And to make this modeling more accessible, We name our custom blocks in a way that uses familiar language where possible, and we limit the use of computer science vocabulary and symbols. So for example, we spelled out words like greater than and less than, because in our experience, we found novice programmers often get these symbols backward, and that leads to a lot of confusion that's not really relevant to the underlying modeling goals. Next slide. So here, Pati's going to launch a 2-minute demonstration video of how the computational modeling environment supports the development and testing of computational models to explain a science phenomenon. So that's this direction, as well as using the resulting computational model to develop, test, and refine engineering solutions. So Pati, if you could, please.
This is the C2 STEM environment developed by our team at Vanderbilt University. It is built using technology that is based on the SNAP visual programming language. The custom programming blocks we developed are here on the left. Students build their code in the scripting area in the center. The outcome of the water runoff simulation appears on the stage on the right. Prior to the computational modeling activities, students draw conceptual models of water runoff to identify system variables and their relationships. Students also engage in offline activities that introduce the programming concepts needed to develop this model. Over the course of 3 one-hour lessons, students program the model that predicts the amount of water runoff based on given amounts of rainfall and material absorption. Here's one correct implementation of the model, which sets the material absorption limit based on the user's material selection. For example, I can select grass from the list of available surface materials. The model calculates runoff based on whether the rainfall is equal to, less than, or greater than the material's absorption limit. As students develop this model, they run the program using this single square simulation to test whether it works. The amounts of rainfall, absorption, and runoff are shown on the rain gauge representations below. In this simulation, of the 2 inches of total rainfall, 1.2 inches were absorbed into the surface, and the remaining 0.8 inches are runoff. The environment is also able to populate students' model code into this 16-square simulation of the school grounds, which students use to develop, test, and refine their problem solution. For instance, I can replace these 2 squares of standard concrete with permeable concrete, which absorbs more water, but is also more expensive. The simulation also computes the total cost of the chosen configuration and can display their design history.
That's the end of it. So I just have one summary slide and we can move on to the next presentation. Yeah, I was going to say, we think our summary, our framework for integrating STEM and CS appropriately integrates 2 important learning research traditions, developing computational artifacts and engaging in simulation-based science inquiry. So by enabling students to use their own computational artifacts in their investigations with a simulation, it really meaningfully integrates the 2 activities. And then finally, toward the goal of broadening participation, activities need to frame science and engineering as authentic computational problems, and the tools must support students' use of cross-disciplinary language. Thanks.
I think that I'm up with Pati Ruiz. I'm Judy Fusco. Thank you all for coming, by the way. I'm Judy Fusco, a senior researcher of STEM teaching and learning, and my colleague Pati is a researcher in computer science education and a teacher expert, and we're going to tell you about a course we've developed. We're really working to make a bridge between the research world and the world of practice. And we both work in both worlds, and we see how much the other has to offer the other. But we still see so much distance between the worlds. So next slide. I'm going to give a little background, and I'm also going to point out that the picture on the right side of the screen are 4 fabulous educators that I worked with at Pepperdine. I'm going to give a tiny bit of ancient history. I started my career in the 1990s working with teachers and developing an online community for teachers called Tapped In. And I also started collaborating with a professor, Dr. Linda Poland, at Pepperdine in their hybrid doctoral program that she started in 1996. She brought the program into Tapped In. We worked with them. I started teaching with her there, and I'm not going to take the time to talk a lot about Tapped In today. I would love to, but I do want to say that I met so many fabulous educators, and I learned so much, and it greatly contributed to how I think today. I think that the teacher voice has so much to offer our work as researchers. So when I started teaching at Pepperdine, I had the opportunity to work with first-year doctoral students, most of whom were very successful practicing teachers who were taking the next step in their career. And some of the key things that I learned from them and that helped us think about how to develop this new course we're going to talk about is that practitioners really understand learning, but they think very differently from researchers. And developing a shared understanding between researchers and practitioners is paramount. And when I saw how different their thinking was from mine, I was really blown away by how much it gave me, and it gave me new insights. And I worked really hard to learn to think across the boundaries of research and practice so I could do a better job bridging those two worlds. As I listened to Anna Svard's keynote, I thought just how much time we took to really dialogue to gain a shared and deep understanding of the concepts. If we just said the same words, we would be, without that deep shared understanding, we wouldn't really be communicating or learning from each other. So we spent a lot of time in our class design really making that a key component of it. One other thing I really learned from the teachers is that they wished they could have learned about learning sciences sooner. They tell me how little their preparation programs helped them think about how to use learning theories to guide or improve their practice. The 2017 NETP update discusses how nearly half of teachers would like to know more about using technology to support learning. So this became a key reason that we developed this course that could work with teachers sooner in their careers. Teachers shouldn't have to wait until they're in a doctoral program to learn about learning. Finally, this work is really a boundary activity. We're working to bring theories to life to support practice. It's not the work of researchers. It's not really the work of practitioners, but there are huge benefits for both sides when it happens. So I think we should try to make more commitment to have this happen, as it will help change our understanding. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Pati now to explain more about how we situate teachers' learning by having them use classroom experiences to ground our course materials.
Thanks, Judy. The course we designed focuses on classroom issues and bringing research to life for teachers. And it's based on a long and active history of collaboration between researchers and practitioners. The course includes new accessible materials that Judy and I found, and we're constantly looking for more. They include short videos, articles, and assignments. Many of the resources come from NSF projects such as the Video Showcase or STEM teaching tools. And through a proposed project, we hope to develop new materials that will continue to bridge research and practice. The course introduces important topics in the learning sciences, and this is done through modules that focus on classroom issues. They combine theories in meaningful ways and provide an introduction to the mechanisms for how learning occurs. The modules comprise 5 main themes, and those are debunking learning myths, motivation from different perspectives, equity, identity, belonging, power, privilege, biases, and funds of knowledge, turning collaboration into convergent conceptual change, and active learning. Participants use what they learn to design activities for their classroom, and the course helps them think through their curriculum and how different pedagogies can affect what students learn. So it's light on history, but heavier on the practice. And the course is structured to run intensively over a summer or less intensely over a semester. In addition, the course has a modular structure, and one module or any number of modules can be chosen for a focused class or workshop. On the next slide, the diagram shows the model for the course. And as you can see, the course starts with teachers in the class identifying a problem of practice that can be revisited throughout the course. So the focus is not a mile wide, instead it goes deep through that problem of practice, and this helps teachers situate learning in their teaching and allows the instructor to guide this process. After the introduction to a module with a learning sciences topic, you'll see the purple oval in the right corner of the diagram, and that's where teachers discuss links between theory and practice to help make theory actionable. Next, they read short, high-quality syntheses of topical areas and watch curated videos that illustrate what learning concepts look like in practice. More time to reflect to help link understanding of research and practice follows through readings and more videos. Along the bottom of the diagram, you see that teachers are then asked to use what they've learned to design a new lesson. The lesson is shared in small groups for feedback, and the instructor helps strengthen links between classroom practice and theory. The course process allows teachers to think about material from different perspectives, and with feedback from peers and experts helping them learn. Many teachers are not aware of how research can inform practice, especially when integrating technologies, and we hope this course can help them start to make those connections. The course structure shown on this slide is repeated for each of the modules for each of the learning sciences topics. In addition to what we learned at Pepperdine, another way we developed this course was through conversation with the Circle Educators. And they are a group of K-16 teachers and school administrators, and you see their faces on this slide, who in collaboration with the Center for Innovative Research and Cyber Learning, Circle, aims to bridge cyber learning research with classroom practice and broaden the community of people engaged in creating effective new learning experiences. Circle Educators provides a meaningful space to reflect on cyber learning work, alongside researchers and other educators who challenge one another to understand technology in more precise ways. This also helps teachers create more powerful learning experiences for their students, and we have a blog called the Circle Educators Corner, and our goal is to broaden the community of people involved in Circle. Judy?
Going back to talking a little bit more about the class, so we've very much appreciated Circle Educators and everything they've given to us. One of the things that we've done as we've developed our class is really work to use free and accessible materials. So Bhatti mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I'm going to expand on it and let you know that the link that is here, and it will be in the PDF that you get following the session, under free and open resources. We've collected several that are free, and more than several that are free and open, and that can be included in any online course or course. And I've challenged us to always use free and open materials. And so has Bhatti. And then finally, the final link on this slide is the syllabus that we created for this class, and it includes a lot of detail about the methods that we're using. We didn't talk about everything in the course, including learning partners, and that's written up in the syllabus. This course is open. It's there for you. We would love to have people take it and take it further, take it in new directions. But we would also love to be in conversation with you. So if you are going to take anything, please let us know, and we'll be happy to talk with you, or or take it and run with it. But I would love to know more about the context that you're working in. I'm going to just thank you all for coming and listening and the great questions so far. Keep them coming, and please do contact us if you are going forward. We would love to work with you to do more bridging work. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy and Pati. And it's yeah, terrific. We're up to about 52 participants at last count. So we're just so glad to have you here. It's very, very rewarding for us. We didn't know how many would come. And now to my colleague Masa on the Dynamic Learning Project.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. My name is Mahsa. I'm the lead research scientist of the Dynamic Learning Project. And I'm joined by my colleague, Angela Hardy. I also see Jason Ravitz in the audience. Jason is one of our former colleagues at Digital Promise and one of the authors of this paper. Thanks for joining us, Jason. Today, we are sharing findings on how instructional coaching can improve instruction with technology. As Judy and Patty explained, one of the learning sciences goals is that research and practice closely inform one another. At Digital Promise, among many other projects, we try to do this as part of the Dynamic Learning Project, which is an instructional coaching program that aims at helping teachers use technology in more meaningful and impactful ways. To do this, we designed the program following the existing research on adult learning and effective teacher professional development. However, the body of research hadn't yet made the case connecting features of effective professional development to technology coaching. So during 3 years of piloting the Dynamic Learning Project, we conducted research to fill this gap and better understand how technology coaching should be executed effectively. So in the first slide, we see that the Dynamic Learning Project was launched in September 2017 in 50 schools in 20 different districts across 5 states, with Google providing funding and program management, Edtech team providing program resources and training for coaches, and Digital Promise providing research and evaluation. Each of the participating districts embedded a full-time school-based coach in each of their schools, each of the participating schools. And the program has since reached 110 more schools in new districts and regions. Most of these schools are Title I schools with 66% of students eligible for free and reduced price lunch, and with 56% of their students being students of color. Slide, please. Each year, the coaches typically worked with a group of teachers for 4 8-week coaching cycles. And slide. During these 8-week cycles, teachers met with coaches one-on-one and agreed to work through the 5 steps in the coaching model, as you can see here. Identifying a classroom challenge or multiple classroom challenges depending on their context and their needs, brainstorming possible strategies, selecting personalized strategies and tools, and then implementing the selected strategies in the classroom through co-teaching, modeling, or observation of teaching practice, and at the end, reflecting on the strategies. Slide. To prepare coaches to deliver this personalized support, the DLP program team provided coaches and their principals with training and support throughout the year, including in-person training, one-on-one mentorship. So each coach had their own coach, custom coaching tools, and communities of practice.
So now that Masa has given you an overview of the structure of the program itself, I'll give you a brief overview of our research objectives and the methods we employed to address these objectives. At Digital Promise, our research team evaluated the Dynamic Learning Project and tried to understand, is this coaching program an effective coaching program? And if yes, why is it effective, or what makes it effective? And in studying and evaluating the DLP, we tried to contribute to the literature exploring the specific ways in which instructional coaching programs should be executed to improve teacher practice. In this project, we consider classroom coaching as a constructivist activity that supports teachers in building meaning and creating change through experience. In this vein, we follow researchers who conceptualize coaching as a form of PD and investigate instructional technology coaching through the lens of 4 key empirically predictive features of effective PD, which are collective participation, active learning, coherence, and sustained duration. For each of these principles, we use empirical evidence from the DLP to translate these broad principles into very specific practices, strategies, and approaches, and help form a better understanding of how, when, and why coaching models work in varying contexts. We employed a longitudinal mixed method design in the study. To collect quantitative data, we utilized a pre-post survey each year of our 3 years, as well as monthly continuous improvement surveys for coaches, principals, and teachers. To collect qualitative data, we conducted interviews, classroom visits, and focus groups at 4 case study schools each year of the 3 years. And in our pre and post surveys, we compared DLP teachers. So those are teachers defined as participating in at least 8 weeks of DLP coaching with what we call non-DLP teachers. So those are teachers who did not participate in 1 or more DLP coaching cycles. These groups were drawn from the same schools and districts.
For findings, I will begin with some data on the effectiveness of the Dynamic Learning Project first. So when comparing DLP teachers with non-DLP teachers, so the teachers who received coaching and teachers who didn't receive coaching, we saw that DLP teachers, after receiving coaching, use technology more frequently in their classrooms, and they also reported that their students use technology more frequently. Here I just give, in a parenthesis, I give an explanation about what we mean by impactful technology use. We define impactful technology use as the ability of educators to develop their students' skills in 6 categories: agency, collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, and ability to select relevant technology tools. These categories were informed by the framework of the 21st century skills. So our data showed that our DLP teachers felt more confident in their ability to facilitate a student impactful technology use, and that they reported doing so more frequently. Our DLP teachers also saw more impact on student engagement and learning as a result of their students' impactful technology use. Moreover, more than 90% of teachers who received coaching reported at least some improvement in the teaching challenges shown as a result of working with their coach. Remarkably, in all 6 of these categories, more than half of participating teachers reported much or very much improvement.
Now let's see what made the DLP effective and what are the features and principles of effective coaching programs. One of the first things we learned from the DLP is that when defined, understood, and implemented as a partnership among administrators, coaches, and teachers, coaching programs are more likely to be successful in creating change in teacher practice. First of all, our data showed that when teachers have the chance to understand coaching as a partnership, they showed more improvement in their teaching practice and their powerful use of technology, as well as improvement and selected classroom challenges. Understanding the established goals around partnership, our research looked at how this is understood and implemented by teachers, coaches, and principals. Partnership means that teachers and coaches are co-owners of the work, and administrators nurture this co-ownership. And the full success of this work would not be possible without the participation of all three parties. So each of these partners has a unique role for accomplishing success in the program. For coaches, their role is to work with teachers to discuss and identify classroom challenges together, to brainstorm and select the most relevant strategies and tools, to implement those selected strategies in the classroom, either through co-teaching, modeling, or observation, and then to always reflect on the strategies and the implementation process with the teachers. Teachers, in addition to taking an active role and working closely and collaboratively with their coach, should volunteer to participate in coaching programs and be open to having a coach in their classroom. And finally, school and district admins are in a unique position to provide administrative and leadership support for coaches working with teachers. The primary responsibility of admins is to make sure that they actively remain involved in the design and implementation of the program in their settings. Interestingly, we found that when principals remained involved throughout the year, teachers feel less stressed about their classroom challenges, feel better about their coaches' coaching skills, and show more improvement in their teaching practices. Admins should also advocate for the coaching position and ensure the availability and freedom of coaches for coaching. And more importantly, admins should make sure that teachers participate voluntarily and without fear of an evaluation. In fact, we found that when teachers volunteered for coaching, slide please, they reported greater involvement in their teaching practice because they were more likely to take ownership of the process. Also, we found that teachers who reported non-evaluative coaching were more likely to participate voluntarily and to report improvement in their teaching practice.
Another feature that we found makes coaching programs more effective is coherence. Teachers who reported their PD was a good fit with what they needed in their current teaching assignments were more likely to report progress in using technology. Case study teachers cited the differentiated support as essential to their satisfaction with coaching and ultimately with their growth. Teachers were more likely to buy into a program that empowered them to tackle self-selected challenges in a way that was relevant to their experiences, skills, and, for example, classroom context. Another feature that we found makes coaching programs more effective was opportunities for teachers to engage in active learning. Our data suggests that when coaching programs include frequent interactions between coach and teacher that engage teachers directly in designing and trying out teaching strategies, they are more likely to improve their skills and practice. In our sample, teachers who reported their PD included enough time to try and evaluate new ideas were more likely to report progress in their teaching. Specifically in the structure of the dynamic learning project coaching model, these opportunities, for example, included one-on-one coach-teacher meetings to plan and debrief classroom visits, informal coach teaching interactions in the hallway, over lunch, over email, or even over text message and Twitter, and also coach visits to teachers' classrooms for the purpose of observing and collecting data, co-teaching, or modeling. And last but not least, we found that instructional coaching is more effective when it provides a substantial number of contact hours between coach and teacher. Our survey data showed that teachers who reported their PD was sustained over time and who received more hours of coaching were more likely to see improvement in their teaching practice as a result of working with their coach. So we can conclude that a coaching program that supports teacher learning doesn't happen over time, and it is not simply met by hiring the most experienced and the most skilled coach. It's a process. Coaching is a process that requires time, planning, collaboration, practice, and perseverance from coaches, teachers, and school and district admins. And at least it needs to be rooted in these 4 key principles of effective teacher professional development. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Masa and team. And once again, we welcome questions in the chat. And for our last presentation this hour, the learner variability team.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you everyone for joining again for our virtual conference. So another part of the educational ecosystem is the Edtech that teachers can use in the classroom, and as Masa and Angela were just talking about with the coaching. So there's also a research practice gap in Edtech design. So designing Edtech using research might be a powerful way to support learners who have different needs. Next slide, thank you. So at the Learner Variability Project at Digital Promise, we bring together research on individual differences in how people learn. And we put this information on a free and open source website called the Learner Variability Navigator, and the URL is there. We also work with EdTech developers to infuse their platforms with science and supports for different learner needs. So on the right is a little bit about our process, how we work with teams of developers to assess and help products work new features into their product roadmaps and their timelines for development. And in this case that I'll talk about today, we worked with a partner that is a literacy platform, and to build supports, help them build supports into their platform for individual differences in learners' attention, working memory, visual processing, among other things. But these are some of the factors that impact literacy development. So we were looking at those factors to look at where, which research would be most beneficial for these learners. Next slide, thank you. So the platform is, among other things, it holds a bank of articles for students to read online. And so this is a screenshot of the student-facing interface that learners would be looking at when they're going in to do the assignments that their teachers have assigned. So I've just put some arrows in too for some of the features that were developed through this partnership. So one is an audio version of the article, and research has shown that audio supports can benefit student engagement and learning for students with different needs. So for example, use of audiobooks can lead to higher interest in reading among English language learners, and also a higher likelihood of students practicing reading on their own. It is very beneficial for students who may have comprehension skills, but their decoding skills aren't as strong. We have, for example, a text magnification feature in the upper right. These are options that students can activate if they wish to. And that feature allows students to adjust the size of the passage text, which can help them in different ways. Research has shown that larger text has been helpful for students who are younger or who have dyslexia. And other research found that older and more skilled readers show more comprehension when reading smaller text. So again, this is individual differences in students. We have one other feature highlighted, the annotation tool, which can help students keep track of important parts of the text and take notes on their reading as well. Next slide. Thank you. So our theory of impact with this work is that if we work with partners, educational technology partners, to address learner variability in the form of implementing different research-based features that students and teachers can use, then we hope, of course, that those features are adopted, that teachers are aware of them and students use them, and ultimately that students would be positively impacted in their engagement and their performance. So to start to examine these teacher reactions and behaviors to this work, this partnership, We conducted an online survey. It was emailed to the subscribers of the platform in October 2018, and we had over 11,000 responses from across the country in 1 week. 75% of those responses were K-12 classroom teachers. Another 21% were school-based specialists, such as reading specialists, librarians, special educators, and this group makes up the educators whose data I'm reporting today. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so the survey listed all of these different features. It was more than just the 3 that I highlighted. It was about 15 different features. And for each one, they were asked whether they knew about or had noticed it on the website, whether sort of in theory they thought that it could support students' learning, whether they had actually used it or encouraged their students to use it, and whether they had observed it support students' learning. So average across the sort of top features, we observed several trends. For most features, we saw that more teachers reported thinking that a feature could support students' learning than actually knew it already existed on the platform. For all of the features, many more teachers reported knowing a feature existed than had actually tried it or encouraged students to try it. But when teachers had tried a feature, the majority of them reported that they observed it support students' learning. So these data were collected at least about 6 months after many of the features were posted on the site. But obviously things will likely have changed the longer that the features were available. But at the time, these results suggested that more outreach was needed with teachers to encourage them to try the features in their classroom, and that many teachers reported positive impact on student learning when they actually had tried the features, suggests that they could potentially benefit students' learning. Okay. We had some additional evidence about educators' enthusiasm for the features from 2 overarching questions. So of the respondents who had actually tried one of the features on the survey, 89% responded that they were likely to assign more articles on the platform, and 82% said that they were likely to assign higher level articles, Lexile, all the articles were coded by Lexile, as a result of those features being available to aid students. So these results suggest that the features may encourage teachers to challenge students and maintain high expectations for their performance. And finally, you'll see on the right, this word cloud, we asked teachers to provide examples of how any of the features have supported their students' learning, including any relevant student characteristics. And then these open-ended responses were coded for the feature listed, the student population mentioned, and the type of support that the feature provided. The most frequently coded feature from the responses was the audio supports, and that's why you see it largest there on the word cloud. And the teachers reported that the audio in particular supported students with their reading comprehension and argument and discussion skills, and that it primarily aided populations of below grade readers, English language learners, and special education students. The other ones that were frequently mentioned were the annotation, the highlighting feature, and teachers thought that it supported students' argument and discussion skills. Thank you. These are a few of the quotes from those open-ended responses. So one teacher said, "I find these features helpful for students when I'm working in small groups and students are working on their own. Students have support when I can't help them." So of course, these data were collected long before our current situation of almost universal distance learning. And it's even more important now that students have support when teachers aren't right there with them in the classroom. So it's interesting to think about how some of these features are even more relevant in the current times. Another teacher said, "I use these features to differentiate learning for students. My class is a diverse group with reading level range of grade 3 to 8. The audio is invaluable for students with reading disabilities. It allows them to participate as their peers do." And we did see other comments along those lines of the features supporting more inclusive classrooms. And I would like more tutorials on the different features if you could model how some of these features are used. Sometimes teachers do not have the time to truly dive into this great website and use it to its fullest potential. So we also saw those trends where some teachers really had the time and interest in exploring all of these different features, and others, didn't have that capacity. So different supports are needed for those teachers. Last slide. Thank you. So again, some of our key findings and lessons. While in most cases, almost half of the teachers thought that the listed features could support student learning, many few of them actually knew about or had noticed the features on the product's website. So in this case, professional development for teachers that encouraged their understanding and use of the features, perhaps through a coaching model, could be very helpful for them. Teachers did comment on how these features enabled greater independence in students because most of those features were optional and always available to students at the time. So in that case, the students had, could use them as needed. And then continuous assessment of feature implementation. So the results of this survey were of course shared with the partner to use as they wanted to for their improvements. And a separate experimental study of the audio supports showed that when more students had access to that support, when it wasn't controlled by the teacher, that more students actually used it. So continuously evaluating the implementation of these features could also be an important source of information on how to make that research practice bridge. And for more information, you have our site there. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all my colleagues. Welcome you back onto video. We only have about 5 minutes left. And you've answered many of the questions that have come up in chat already, so thanks for that. People have remaining questions. Why don't you type them into chat and we'll see if we can get 1 or 2 more answered while we wait. And I think some of the questions have asked for people to go a little bit deeper on their tools for equity. So I'd like to invite each of my colleagues to make one remark, starting with Kevin, to give a little bit more flavor about like what your framework was that you provide to the curriculum designers.
Sure. So there was a really good question, I think, from Holly, and I typed a response there. I think to add to that, I think it was important for us to really be specific about what, not to take the entire equity space, but to take 2 particular dimensions, in this case, engagement and language, and to focus on those and to be very specific in what it means to design to support those particular dimensions. So I think it was really important for our work to do that.
Thanks, Kevin. That resonates with me as well with some of the computational work we're doing with districts and schools. Vocabulary is something that teachers really want help with engaging students in the language. Judy, you have the power and privilege section of your curriculum. You want to give people a bit more on what you've done there?
Sure. I think I've come back on so you can see and hear me. So when we start talking with teachers about equity, one of the things we start with is identity, and really helping them understand identity from a learning sciences perspective, which includes not just the psychological components, but how students are seen by others. And I think that is really eye-opening for a lot of teachers, and it's a way in to conversations about power and privilege, and we read a lot more and discuss a lot more about equity then. I don't know how much you want me to talk about this because we don't have very much time.
We don't have much time, so I think it's,
so I'll just
give
stop
people
there.
a bit of a flavor. Yeah. Thank you. Let's rotate over to the DLP team. Is there something you could take us a little deeper with in terms of what you've been working on? Angela or Masa?
I can jump in, and Masa, feel free to add on. I think for us, the equity thread for us presented as building and designing and iterating along the way with the participants. So hearing the voices of coaches, both in in-person gatherings, as well as through frequent continuous improvement checks where They were able to submit anonymous information to let us know how things were and weren't working in their settings. And the same goes for listening to the voices of our principals, our teachers, and also our students in focus groups in our case study schools throughout the 3 years, and making sure that their unique contexts and needs were reflected in the changes and improvements that were made to the program.
And last but not least, but Maida, would you like to make some remarks about how the learner variability project has really focused on equity?
Yeah, absolutely. So our work, it takes a whole child approach. So what we do is we don't just look at where students are in their math or literacy skills, but we actually synthesize the research on how all of those cognitive, social, emotional, and then student background factors interact with each other. And that is one way where, you know, we're thinking about diverse student needs, but really thinking, you know, how can you support students who have different needs without it, and sort of build it into the everyday work of the classroom instead of it being an extra thing for teachers to do or edtech designers to do. So again, you know, like the example we provided, the features are now added for any student to use. They don't have to be a student who's labeled low income or special ed or anything. They're there for any student to take advantage of if they can benefit from them. So that is, I think, one way that we are trying to kind of bring the awareness of learner variability, make that more front and center for everybody, you know, is differing on different factors.
Thanks. Well, let me invite Pati to turn off the slides and invite those who are still with us maybe to turn on their video and just wave hello, goodbye. And we're so glad you came to our session. And thanks to all my colleagues for preparing these presentations. And we'll just leave the floor open for a few minutes for anyone who wants to stay and offer anything. Good to see you all.
We're also eager to continue the conversation afterwards, right? So folks, I think we can all be found pretty easily on DP's website, our contact. So we really encourage people to reach out to us.
And if you think Digital Promise might be a place you want to work in the future, let us know that too, because we'd be happy to talk with you about what we're doing and openings we may have coming up. Okay, well, thanks everyone. I'm great you'll be in contact about Circle, Mighty. Terrific. Great to have the feedback.
If Jennifer's still on, yeah, I think we're going to try to post this video to the ICLS. ICLS is inviting people to
post recordings,
upload related materials, yeah, including recordings. So I think we'll put it there and see if there's any other appropriate place for us to link it.